Good morning everyone, and thank you for joining me today in this video. And this is pretty much going to be about me managing my goals and expectations today. It's a fantastic morning to be out, but let me explain what I mean. So in the last few times I've been out, it's been absolutely fantastic conditions. There's been a lot of fog and mist, and that doesn't guarantee good photographs, but those are some of my most favourite conditions to be out in, and I really love being out in those conditions. And I got a number of images recently that I'm really pleased with. Today that is not the case in terms of the conditions. It's forecast to be the warmest day of the year so far, so it's going to be very humid. The midges will be out soon, and it's forecast to be really bright sunlight with very little cloud in the sky. So I'm out early today, and I maybe get a couple of hours of quite nice light. But I'm keeping my goals and expectations quite low. I think it's very important to consider what your goals and expectations are every time you're out. So if you're going somewhere that you're familiar with and you know there's potential for great photographs and the conditions are great, it's fine to have the bar set quite high, and I guess it's fair to be a little bit disappointed if you go away with some poor images. But if you're out somewhere new that you've not been before and the conditions are not ideal, or you've got very little time, then you need to be realistic. You need to, of course, prioritize enjoying your day, but not put too much pressure on yourself about the images that you get. You may get a fantastic image, it may be a worthwhile scouting exercise, but you're going to enjoy your day nonetheless, out for a nice walk and doing some photography. What could be better? So those are my thoughts for today. Manage my goals and expectations, but as always, I'd really love to go away with a nice image. I'm also expecting to take a very small number of images today, which is something I typically normally do anyway, but I'm really going to try and concentrate on getting maybe at least one nice image, and I think that would be a good result for today. If I get 2 or 3, then that would be a bonus. But just keeping my goals and expectations in check today and prioritizing just enjoying this early morning. So I found something behind me here which caught my interest and I think makes for a nice photograph early on this morning. So I'm walking along this little path here, which is quite interesting. We've got a nice tree in the left and some nice trees in the distance. So you think automatically there's a nice woodland scene here, but I also noticed the sun rising in the distance through the trees, and there was a very distinct line of light coming across the scene from the left, and that light was falling at this side of the tree. But I was aware that the sun was moving in the sky, so that light would hopefully eventually be cast more on the grasses and some of the trees in the distance behind this main tree on the left here. Now you may think as you're walking through the woodland, we've got all the fantastic ingredients we need here for a nice woodland scene. We've got some nice trees, we've got this winding path, almost an S curve going off. But in my opinion, the shot doesn't work with the path in. It introduces too many variables. I think there's too much foreground in the scene. It introduces elements of the sky as well through the trees if you go wide enough to include too much of the path. So for a number of reasons I don't want that in my shot. What I'm all interested in here is light, the trees and the long grasses, and that's what I want the photograph to be about. So I've got the camera very low so I can shoot through and along the tops of the long grasses here. And I'm using a depth of field that lets me get this tree on the left sharp, have some of the foreground out of focus, and the trees in the distance out of focus, but clear enough that you can make out what they are. And I think that makes for quite a nice image. I also just like the way we've got little patches of soft, dappled, early morning light in the scene, and I think it's quite a pleasing early morning woodland scene. So that's what I've been trying to achieve here with this photograph, and I think it makes for quite a nice shot, so I'm happy with that. I'm going to continue on my way and see if I can find anything else. So it certainly looks like the weather forecast is going to be accurate today. It's still very early in the morning, but that sun is getting ever brighter, it's getting warmer. The sky is cloudless, it's a lot of blue sky, some whiter areas due to the intensity of the sun in the direction that it's rising. So it's absolutely fantastic to be out. The birds are making their music all around me, and it's just fantastic. Very calm, not a lot of wind, but it is going to get ever more challenging now as the day goes on for photography. Another reason that I'm keeping my goals and expectations quite low today are, other than the conditions of course, is that I'm in an area and heading into this area that I've never been in before. Now I know there's countryside and woodland, of course, but I don't know the finer details or what I can expect to find here really in terms of being nice for capturing images. But we'll head on and enjoy the day and see what I can find. It really is fantastic to be out, and I think it's always important just to come out and enjoy days like this, regardless of the photographs that you head home with. So it's almost 9 AM now, and it's getting incredibly warm. It certainly is going to be the warmest day of the year so far, as the weather forecast predicted. And we've got these very bright skies as well, cloudless as I spoke about earlier. So it is getting ever increasingly challenging today, but there's still shots to be had. And as I was walking along, I saw this scene, which will be in the right of the video here. Off in the distance, we've got a number of trees, 1, 2, 3, 4 to 5 that I'm taking in my shot, and a couple of them lean to the left of the image, got some branches that come out to the left, and we've got quite an interesting shaped stone wall behind it. And there's been some interesting light on the scene as well. There's some branches coming down that are getting the sunlight on them as well. So it's really a case of looking for what I would class as smaller details of the landscape now, such as that, which work, because if you take in a wider shot in this area that I'm in at the moment, you're taking in far too much brightness, bright sky and so on, and quite harsh light, so it doesn't really work. But I think that little section there that I've been photographing is working very well, and it's also something that I think would work very well equally in black and white. So that interested me as well when I was looking at the scene, just because of the contrast between light and dark and some of the structures and so on that are there. I think it'll work equally as well, if not better, potentially in black and white. So that's certainly an option when it comes to processing this one. So I've been taking this one handheld with my 50 to 140 lens, zoomed in at very close to the 140 millimeters, and using the IBIS and optical image stabilization. That comes in very handy now that I've got the Fuji X-T4, so I can certainly take quite a few more shots handheld that I would have been reluctant to do so in the past. But yeah, quite a nice little image, I think, hopefully, considering the conditions and what I've got to work with today. But I think by the looks of things now, I'm going to be heading into some woodland, so we'll see what we can find there. So I began my video this morning by taking an image with my camera and tripod positioned just off to the left of a pathway, and I'm finishing the video in a very similar manner, except the image I've taken here has been taken with my camera and tripod just off to the right of a path. So I think this little scene behind me is working quite well at the moment. It's about midday, maybe 11 AM, and the sun is very high in the sky. It's very bright and it's very warm, so I think the forecast has been 100% accurate for today. This section is working well for a couple of reasons. I've got this wonderful canopy of trees providing shielding from the sun in terms of light and heat, so that's fantastic. And it's making the light quite good for this scene behind me here. So what I like is the pathway obviously leading off into the woodland, and I'm taking in a small number of these trees, many of which lean in towards and over the pathway, so I think that's quite effective in a woodland composition. Now the sun is in this direction, so it's pretty much at 90 degrees towards the scene that I'm photographing. So my polarizer is working very well in this scene. Without it, there's some glare in the foliage, and by turning the polarizer quite strongly, it's helping get rid of that glare, saturating the colours a little bit and just making the scene look a lot nicer overall. And I think it's going to turn out quite well. Now I've got to be mindful of my exposure. My standard 3:2 aspect ratio works quite well, but that means I'm taking in some of the sky. And I do like the composition in a 3:2 aspect ratio, but I'll need to see just how distracting that sky could potentially be once I've edited the image. I've also been looking at it in a 16:9 aspect ratio, and I think that's going to work really well too, which will help eliminate most of, if not all of, the sky. So I've got a couple of options here, and I'll show you which one I prefer. But this is going to be my last image for today. The heat is rising with the sun rising in the sky, and the light out with this little shaded section I've found isn't ideal for photography anymore. So this is going to be my last shot. And I've spoke about throughout this video managing your goals and expectations and how I've done that for today. And I think that's really important for your photography. It's going to prevent you from being extremely disappointed when you go out on days that's not ideal and you don't capture fantastic images. You can manage your expectations and not get so deflated about that. But it also helps you progress your photography as well. So if you go out in fantastic conditions, say to a foggy woodland, or maybe get a wonderful sunset in a beautiful scene up high in the mountains or whatever, your expectations and goals should be quite high. So that drives you on to keep improving at your photography and keep seeking better images. So I think it's really important just to get your goals and expectations set for each time you head out to do photography, and always make them realistic with the location, the weather, and the amount of time that you have. But as always, I really do appreciate you watching. Thank you so much for taking the time, and I'll hopefully see you in my next one.